Okay, Facebook, Masterclass time. I'm so excited for today. And I just picked this filter because isn't that so pretty? It's got this like lovely little rainbow. Okay, got my water, got my afternoon caffeine. No judgment there. Yeah, this is a really interesting topic. And I want you to know when I sit and do these, like I'm really sitting with all of the ideas and all of the experience that I've had with these sort of big, but then also very nuanced topics too, right? With clients and within my own work too, right? So there's like a lot that I could say and there's a lot that I would love to say. And I'm always like, there's a part of me that's like, we gotta get this right. We can't miss the big ideas or like the big pieces. I want this to be helpful for you. I think we love the idea of releasing anything uncomfortable. But the truth is, it's actually healing is learning to be with this discomfort. And that's how that is, right? Because healing is like, it's the place that used to be painful that I can visit that no longer is, right? It's the place that my emotional memory held in this very uncomfortable, traumatizing place that's very effing real. And healing is being able to bring that forward or bring that memory up or think into it and feel into it without a collapse or a desire to run, right? Healing is learning how to stay where we used to run or avoid, right? And we're all going to have places we want to run from still. Like, that would be wild to imagine that. You know, we're a clear body that doesn't have any human element to us, right? We're not robots yet, I hope, right? So we're going to have places that feel more vulnerable than others, right? That's just how that works. Hi, Teddy Lynn. So let's talk about the distraction and our desire to distract. Like, again, there's so many things I can say. But the piece here is like distraction and judgment. So when I say judgment, I'm talking about the judgment we have toward ourselves, the way that we judge the voices in our head, the behaviors we have, the thoughts we have, the things we do or the things we don't do, where we get, where we pull ourselves out of our intention. We judge ourselves for the human fears we have, for the way our body looks, all of these things. But both distraction and judgment. So distraction meaning like the ways that we pull ourselves out of an intention or the ways that we, even in the moment, fall into getting a quick reward versus a long-term goal, right? This is what distraction is, right? But distraction and judgment both allow for the same outcome, which is abandoning ourselves, right? Which is abandoning the parts of ourselves that need healing or the parts of ourselves that are uncomfortable or the parts of ourselves that are not ideal in that moment, that are inconvenient, right? So if you're going to do something, so let's say I'm going to do this live and I'm like, oh, and I didn't have it planned. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to go live or like, I'm going to go write that post or whatever, right? There's something about me, I'm going to go out and express myself. And it's like, there's lots of opportunity to have a judgment about my value, about my worth, about my looks, about my ability, about like my worthiness, about my own whatever it is, right? There's a place where I can get a little judgment on myself, which then is going to make it much easier for me to validate or create a distraction. Oh, actually, I should probably, write out a bunch of notes before I do this, or I should probably like run it by my biz bestie, or like there's probably some things that I should do before I do that thing, right? And so distraction can be just a way that we draw something out much longer than it needs to be versus actually taking the action. So a lot of clients come to me because they want to gather clarity, and clarity is something that comes through action, right? And it's kind of like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Like, do we clear your blocks first or do we get you into action? It's like there's no right or wrong answer. There's just a willingness, right? And a place that where we can lean into, like, yes, do we want to have like a general sense of what our human blocks are or where our gaps are? Yes. Do they need to be fully cleared before we can take action? Absolutely not. Definitely not. In fact, how you Like, I can't think my way to a clean kitchen. I can't Pinterest it. I can't imagine it. I can't like wonder about a clean kitchen. I can't judge myself to do it. I have to get up and clean my kitchen, right? And so we don't have to have all of our blocks cleared before we take action, but that's what distraction or the voice of distraction or the voice of fear will tell you, right? He's like, we're not ready yet. Like, I wrote a post like years ago and I'm like, stop getting your army guys ready. Like, the game is not just getting your army guys ready. The game is like you in the game, right? Okay, so they both lead to, I got my little notes actually. This is just to help me stay focused and not be distracted onto like a bunch of tangents. But here's the thing. This is the first point, right? Is that a distraction and judgment both have the same outcome and they lead to self-abandonment, meaning they lead to me moving away from my inner desire, moving away from the vulnerable parts of me that I'm like suppressing, that are keeping me in this loop of distraction and judgment. They both lead to the same outcome, right? Which is not going to those places within us that we need to get going into. There's also this idea that distraction requires discipline to overcome it. And so I would just love for you to really define what discipline means. What is discipline? What does that mean? Is that even valuable? Do you need discipline? And there's a part of me that's like, discipline is such a bro marketing tactic. So I do take these classes seriously. I do lots of like my own research. I do lots of digging in. I look at all my notes from past clients. Like, I'm like, what is this really about? Let's like stay off everybody telling me what judgment is or like whatever. It's like, what does it mean to you? So in that, there's like some wonderful ideas out there, but a lot of it's like this bro marketing, which, okay, fine, you have discipline. I'm disciplined. I go to the gym every morning. I do this, da, 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 da. Everything's a spectrum, but that energetic approach to like carrying out your vision or carrying out your goals or those long-term visions that you have that need you to be consistent and stay the course. Yeah, they need discipline, sure. But discipline has this ugly side to it where now you're just seeking a sense of control. If I'm disciplined, then I have control of myself. I have self-control. If I have self-control, I have control. And if I have control, I don't have to feel discomfort. I can control myself. I don't have to go there. I don't have to feel fear. I don't have to da-da-da. That's the exact same side of the other side of the same coin, which is, how can I not be with myself? How can I not face the human element of despair or fear or absolute, sadness or grief or whatever, shame, whatever it is, right? We have to be able to access and go to these places with vital force energy, meaning we don't need to continue to run from them or hide them from the world. Judgment allows us to validate that that's okay, because we think if we judge ourselves, we can then hate ourselves into healing almost. Like, that's an extreme way of saying it. But if I can keep this loop of judgment and not look at it and not get honest about it and not get curious about it and not lean into it and see what's underneath judgment, because underneath the judgment you have for yourself, first of all, those are all learned things. They're all social, familial learned things. Judgment is a learned thing for our brain. There's another side of it where discernment and like judgment is, there's healthy, helpful ways about it, but that's not the way I'm talking about it. I'm talking about the way that judgment keeps you looped and locked into your own fears of your own parts of yourself, right? So these are learned things, and underneath judgment is a very young, scared part of us that got hurt, that's holding the memory of what it was like to feel judged. And so rather than go there, we'll stay up top where we can just beat ourselves up with it, right? It doesn't move us forward. So the other thing too is, okay, so I'm really against my kids watching YouTube shorts. I don't know about you, but like, it drives me absolutely bananas and bonkers. And I'm not a fan of YouTube for kids. I'm like such an old fogey. And I'm like, kids these days, like, there's screens and all that. And like, to be fair, we're a pretty screen light family. Like, my husband doesn't even have a cell phone. He hasn't had one for like 10 years, which is like wild. And my kids don't have phones, obviously, because my daughter's only 10. So like, there's no phones for them, but they still have access I just bought like a smart TV, and it was like, oh my God, you can hook this up to the, like, it was wild. We were so behind the times, right? But it just means that they watch, that now they have access to shorts. And I can't stand YouTube shorts. I'm like, this is brutal. It's like rewiring their brain and it's wrecking everything. And the truth is, actually, YouTube shorts or like any kind of media and algorithm based like that is not doing anything that isn't already there in us. Meaning, our brains are wired for short-term dopamine hits. They're wired for short-term pleasure, okay? I'm not talking about pleasure in like, I'm talking about pleasure in the sense of like, what's the easiest thing to do? What's the easiest way to go about it? So our brains are literally wired for pain aversion, meaning if there's something that I perceive is going to be painful, I'm either going to draw it out to get to the end, like I'm going to just make it so painfully slow on myself through, guess what, distractions, judgments of myself, you keep myself on that loop, right? Because we're automatically have an aversion to pain. It's just what our brain does, right? So our brain's already wired for that short-term hit of pleasure. And that's how it is, right? That doesn't mean that we can't access a different way for our brain to operate, right? It doesn't mean that we can't. It just means that we need to understand that that's how our brain is wired, is operated for like the least amount of pain. And what a really smart evolutionary thing to have in our system. That's great. But we also have to understand that when we're going to follow through on a vision, or we're going to follow through on a commitment, or we're going to do something that may feel scary or bring up fear or bring up emotions, we're going to want to get out and have that ace in our back pocket. We're going to want our outs. We're going to want our exit points, right? And so part of releasing anything is knowing where it is, what it's all about. You don't have to necessarily even know where it came from, but you have to understand where it lives in your body or where it shows up in your life. So if I ask you, well, first of all, do you notice that you judge yourself? Are you really hard on yourself? Is it never enough? Are you never there? Are you never good enough? Where are you comparing yourself? Because that's what comparison is like from judgment, right? So if you got honest about like, where are the places you're judging yourself, or where do you think you haven't arrived yet, or where is it still not enough? So where in your daily life right now is that happening? So for some of us, it's going to be in certain areas and not so much in others. So like, for example, there's really not a lot of judgment that I have around the food that I eat, right? There's a little niggly once in a while that's like, probably more vegetables, right? But it's not a judgment. It doesn't get me to have any stress response where I fight back against or I freeze and I'm like, oh, I can't ever change. Like, that's a pretty low, not threshold, but like that's a really low priority that I would ever want to think about. But there's other areas in my life that I judge as not good enough, right? Still not smart enough, or still haven't like evolved to that place where I really want to, right? And that, here's what I really want to say. I love that I love that there's a lot of options out there for self-development and healing and therapy. I love that it's being normalized. I love that it's being invited into more and more people's homes and in their lives. I love there's more books on it. I love that more than any time in history that I can ever think about or know about. Are we becoming aware of our own awareness in like a intentional way of like, I want to do something about that. I want to do something about myself. I want to be better, right? So wonderful. It's interesting though, because it's paired with a culture that thrives on selling scarcity, and the culture thrives on not enoughness. So it is setting you up to be in that perpetual cycle of needing to find more for yourself, needing to get better for yourself. It's bloody exhausting, But it's no different than the way that kids are going through the scroll of hit after hit after hit after hit. We need to be mindful that our journey, our healing journey, our self-development journey, whatever you want to call it, is not based on that same aversion to accepting where we are is perfectly fine and great and fabulous. And can we just let it be enough? We have an aversion to that. We have an aversion to, like, we're being told that we're settling or we're making excuses, or like, when are we ever going to own ourselves here? When are we ever going to take back our power and reclaim ourselves? At what point? At what point are you enough? Right? And so this releasing of this judgment and the distractions that are born from judgment, by the way, just to clear that up, distractions are not out of a vacuum. Yes, we are neurologically, like, inclined to distract ourselves because we have pain aversion. There's that's real. But bigger still is the fact that this internalized judgment is going to be the thing that gets us to distract ourselves. Right? Yes. Thank you, Godoma. Like, when is it? When will you be there? Like, when are you there? And this is why I love that my clients are really, like, wanting to hit this, like, stretch goal that we set for ourselves at the beginning of our time together. I love that we're working toward it. But part of my job too is to, like, keep them here in the present of celebration of not just bragging. This goes beyond the brag culture. This is way beyond that. This is like, I'm conscious and I'm noticing and I'm here seeing how I'm already there. This is Law of Attraction 101. It's like, fine, you want something, you believe it's in the future time, but actually, if you really want it to manifest, we only manifest from right now. Where the hell else would we manifest from? Come on, it's logical, right? It's like you pull that idea and you live it in the now. So, that's the truth of what I think about the industry. I think it's wonderful, and I also think that it continually and probably consciously and on purpose creates the very thing that it's selling to you to get rid of in your life. What are you going to do? I mean, I don't have the answers to that. Just an awareness of, like, one of my biggest fears for children right now. It's a huge fear, and I sit with it. And it can distract me. So this is, like, maybe a little off topic, and I don't really care because it's my masterclass and I'll do what I want to. But, like, one of my huge fears for children right now, and I really especially am worried about children in the States, only, like, I don't know the whole system, but I have an idea, and maybe it's not the right one, but I am very, very concerned at the critical thinking or lack thereof that our children are being taught. That our children are definitely, like, we understand that the whole education system as it is now was created back in the Industrial Revolution to create robots that would go out and learn a skill and go out and participate in the culture of the Industrial Revolution and capitalism. Okay, so we understand that, right? But there's no excuse now for that, in the sense that ideally we should have evolved consciously. Consciousness should have evolved at this point to understand that it is imperative for our own survival and our own cultural survival and our own mental, emotional, spiritual survival that we really teach children how to think for themselves. And my greatest fear is that they are not. If anything, this is the worst time for children to think for themselves. I'm very concerned about that. These are things that, you know, that do keep me up at night, that I notice within myself. I try to suppress a little. Because if I think about it too much, right, I feel like I'm going to implode, right? And this is what distraction is about, right? It's like, that's a Pandora's box. If I really feel that, I'm going to fucking lose my mind. Or I'm going to like fall into a pit of despair without any solutions to the problem I'm very effing aware is there, right? So when you're a deep thinker and a deep feeler, which I really believe we all are, these are things that we aren't really having really ongoing conversations about, the things that we are afraid of in this world the way that it is. But these are realities, right? And I think that if we aren't doing the work for ourselves, our personal work, our healing work, our therapy, whatever you want to call it, we become in a freeze state. We become frozen with fear of the reality we're aware of, and we don't do anything about it. We stay frozen in that stress response. Oh my God, this is horrendous what is happening to children, and they're not taught how to think, or, I mean, they're banning books in the state. What the hell is going on? The hell is going on? How is any of this okay? Like, I'm sorry for the people who are going through the horrible outcomes of the hurricane, and we can like see how there's probably a lot of climate change reasons for that. So that's like a different horror, right? It's horrific, the things, it's horrific. It's horrific. And there's also this like low level buzz of horrific on a daily basis that somehow as a collective, we have this bystander syndrome where we don't do anything about it. I mean, and I'm not doing anything, I'm just talking about it, right? I'm just talking about it. So this is where judgment of a system, or judgment of like an external thing, or even judgment in myself, like, you know, well, you're talking about it, but you aren't actually doing anything about it, right? Talking is part of doing, right? So there's healthy judgment that we can have, right? That helps us navigate and helps us name the things that we think are just horrific, because they are. Because they are. And of course, there's a lot of glorious, beautiful things happening in the world, right? But I think if we aren't in doing our own work, we become distracted by our own emotions. We become distracted by the depths that these emotions will take us, right? And that's a huge distraction, and such a heartbreak for me to think about. Is like the reason that we do or we don't is because of feelings we have. And why aren't we teaching our children, like, how are we not being taught, like, humans are feeling emotional beings first and foremost. Yes, we're smart, we're logical, we're this, we're that, we're conscious, but we are aware of ourselves because we feel ourselves, like physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, generationally. We feel ourselves, we feel our beingness. And if we try to suppress our feelings, we can't. We cannot suppress our feelings. We cannot be robots, right? We just can't. And so it slays me that the thing that holds us back from doing something or not doing something is because we have feelings, and then we judge the feelings we have, and then we feel more of those difficult feelings, shame, despair, depression, maybe anxiousness. And then what do? We judge ourselves for feeling that again, even though we know better. And then we judge ourselves for not being able to get out of it. And then we judge ourselves for feeling that we're not reaching our potential. And then we judge ourselves for the fear that we have of our own mortality. Have I lived a good life? Have I done everything I wanted to do here? Am I making a difference? So we can't handle self-judgment for too long. We have to have a way to deal with it. And for some of us, it's distracting ourselves into something that's going to give us happy dopamine hits. Just like my kids on YouTube Shorts. Cool, garbage, right? But it's like we have a capacity to hold discomfort and the discomfort and pain that self-judgment will get, and then we can't do it anymore. A lot of children are growing up with anxiety. I'm doing air quotes here. I'm not sure how I feel about all that. I'm kind of sick of putting it on the kids as though they have something going on. I'm really sick of that. Actually, it really pisses me off. It pisses me off that the kids are being the ones labeled versus a system that's imperative in their own experience of what they're feeling in their body. So I get really turned off and really pissed off when we're talking about our children having anxiety, as opposed to my kid is really in tune with what's actually going on in the world and they're feeling it all. Can we stop labeling our children anxious? I get that it's real. I was an anxious kid. I get it. It's all real. And we're also not vacuous, robotic humans that don't exist in relationship with the world that we're living in. So that really bugs me. It really, like, it obviously gets me very triggered. Because how can children not grow up anxious right now? How is that possible? We are literally training our children's brains with this screen time, and I'm not judging parents for doing it. I really want to freaking clarify this. But it's something we're all doing. So let's just say what it is, right? Let's just say the elephant in the room. Our kids are on screens. More than we were, more than they should be. Point blank, this is the hill I'll die on. Our kids have way too much fucking screens. Period. Done. And because of that, they can't be bored. They don't know how to handle boredom. They don't know how to handle boredom. One of my hard rules, which, I try to make it hard, is my kids can't have screens in the car. The car is a beautiful place to just stare out into space and watch the condensation and watch the trees go by and just be present. Be fucking bored in the car. It's a great place to be bored. Without the skill of being bored, I don't want to think about the outcomes of that. Right? I don't even want to think about it. And so that's just adding to an already inherent human problem of pain aversion. Boredom is painful for kids sometimes. And also coupled with the fact that many parents, and I'm not clear on who I'm talking about as parents right now. It's not really identifying any one group of culture, people, anything like that. So I'm just saying in general, we feel responsible to entertain our kids, or if our kids are bored, it's like our job to do something about it, and it's not. And we are so afraid of our own children's boredom sometimes. It's wild. But all of these are just contributing to the already inherent human ability to be have an aversion to pain, or have an aversion to boredom, or have an aversion to be with ourselves. Because when you have to be quiet with yourself, you have to be with yourself, hear yourself, accept yourself, love yourself. Just be with yourself, which is such a simple concept. So hard to do. In theory, it's easy, right? Just sit down and be with yourself. So I'm going to leave it at that. It's really, there's a lot of things that I had written down on my little stickies. Lots of stickies. And I didn't really cover most of them in order. But all of them, everything I said is important. I guess this one's really important. I'm getting old now. I'm like, what's... I would love to hear your thoughts. What is resonating with you? Can you hit me some hearts if some of this is resonating? I really appreciate. And I forgot to... share this in my Facebook group. Yoicks. No judgment. I'd love to hear some things that landed for you. Do you share some of the annoyance I have with kids these days? Oh, literally, I am so worried. Oh, I know what I didn't say, and I'm going to say this really quick because I do have a client call in a minute. Okay, here's what I wanted to say. Hold on a second. Hi, Laura Ann. Yes, always. It's good to be bored. It's it's an essential piece to being bored. 150%. We need to be bored. Yep. So here's what I wanted to say, which I got off on a tangent. And I want this to be helpful for you, because I remember when I came into this awareness, I was like, right. I don't even remember if it was a healing circle, if my mentor taught it to. I don't remember where it came from. I just remember going, right, that makes sense. And I think part of our healing is when we're it makes sense. It's where we give ourselves permission. The moment we say that makes sense is when we stop judging ourselves, by the way. So this is why I get really heat up when clients are that makes so much sense. I'm yeah, you're not crazy. Okay. So if you resonate with being a bit of an anxious child, right? Ooh, which way is mommy going to feel today? And how do I need to contort myself in order to not piss her off or whatever, right? Who do I need to be today to be Well, I'm going to high school. Like, what should I be when I'm there? Like, what version of me? All of these are creating anxiety, right? It's like this, like, ay. And so I think of anxiety as like this, it's a buzz. It's like busy, buzzy, fast. It's like you can't ever, it's like you're constantly feeling like you're trying to stay above water. Like it's buzzy. It's teeth clenching at night. It's mind racing. It's buzzy. It's fucking exhausting. And so, like, a body can only handle that for so long until it needs to shut down. It can only handle it for so long. And then you end up moving from anxiety into depression because it feels hopeless. I can't get a handle on it. I feel like I just want to iron my life out. Like, I can't ever get there. I can't get a handle. It's buzzy. In the work I do, I say it's too many parts at the party. Meaning there's too many voices and you can't focus on one voice. It's a real skill, by the way, to be able to focus on one voice that you have or one part of yourself and fucking stay with it. You'd be surprised how quick clients get distracted. I'm like, wait, where did you go there? You were really connected to this sensation and then you left it. What's going on? Right? So part of healing is having the ability to stay. This is a real skill. We are not taught this skill. So anxiety is going blah, blah, blah. So if you found yourself anxious as a child or anxious in your teenage years or even possibly now, but then you hit this like fucking depresso mode, that's normal. That's natural. That's part of how the body has to try to figure it out. And and I just want to normalize that experience. Okay? And I want to normalize like depressive thoughts. I want to normalize ideation. I want to normalize all of it because I think we wouldn't be human if we weren't experiencing. And I don't care how much work you've done or how healed you think somebody is. Everybody, fucking everybody has their shit behind the curtain. Period. Point blank. Everybody does. Everybody's running from something. Everybody's suppressing something in themselves. Everybody's avoiding one thing or another in their life. Everybody's avoiding having that conversation with somebody. We're all shitting all over our boundaries half the time and coming back and remembering them and relearning them. Everybody is. This is more than just we're doing the best we can. So I want to like normalize all of that and also invite you and encourage you to own your desire to shift and evolve and build more capacity and build more resiliency, if you will, if I could drop that word in there. It's really capacity building and just expanding your threshold, because that's really what the work is about, is like expanding your threshold. Like before I couldn't handle saying this or doing this or identifying this way, and I'm building this threshold where I can hold some of the discomforts, and as I hold the discomfort, it becomes less and less in my system. Okay? So, I gotta go. I have that call in a few minutes. I love you all. And thank you for joining me. Lorianne, it's lovely to see you. And everybody else, thank you. I love you all. Bye.